Silence can indicate acceptance in some circumstances, but those circumstances require some action to be attached. So, and the court spends a lot of time talking about how Empinol did more than remain silent. It took the benefit of the services, knowing they were to be paid for in accordance with the offer, and having had a reasonable opportunity to reject it. So it wasn't just complete silence, it was doing something. It was ordering the work, accepting the services. So the test here is ultimately whether a reasonable bystander would believe that the offer had been accepted. The ultimate test for determining acceptance by conduct is, would a reasonable bystander regard the contract of the offence, including the offence, the offeree, let me start again. The ultimate test for determining acceptance by conduct, would a reasonable bystander regard the conduct of the offeree, including their silence, as signalling that the offer had been accepted? I have a terrible feeling I'm overcomplicating this, and it's pretty damn simple. In order, under the classic view of contract, to get to agreement, we need to have an offer. What's an offer? You're breaking my heart here. There's a little bit of my soul that is dying here. What's an offer? A promise? So an offer is a statement about what somebody will do, a promise that contains all of the terms attached to that promise. So it will need to identify the consideration, it will need to be sufficiently certain, it will need to demonstrate an intention to be legally bound, those things that we'll talk about in more detail. But it's basically, it's a set of terms that are capable of acceptance without variation. So capable of acceptance on their face. So a complete deal that's capable of acceptance. The acceptance itself needs to not provide any variation. If it provides a variation, what is it? Yeah, it's not acceptance, it's a counteroffer. And a counteroffer can then be accepted. And once we have an offer, whether that's the original offer or a counter-offer or a counter-offer, doesn't matter. Once we have an offer that's accepted without variation, then we have agreement. So in order for it to be accepted, the acceptance needs to be communicated. In other words, in all of this, we're looking at it objectively. In order to work out whether somebody's made an offer, we use an objective test. What would a reasonable bystander think of the conduct, given if they were in the same circumstances, had the same information as the offeree? Would they think it was an offer? If the answer to that is yes, then it's an offer. Similarly, has it been accepted? What would a reasonable person in the situation of the offeror expect the conduct or the action or the words of the offeree to mean? If they would think them to be an acceptance, then we have an agreement. And for that reason, silence alone never gives us enough for us to meet that objective standard. So, a couple of focus rules. Acceptance is effective at the time and the location that it's received by the offeror. It takes place when and where it's received by the offeror, and it won't be effective until the offeror actually receives the communication, except if it's sent by post. So let's come back to that. What kind of communications might we use? We don't care. At this stage, for making a contract, we don't care. A communication could be oral. It could be writing. It could be a combination of oral and writing. It could be on an electronic platform. It could be on paper. It could be graffiti. It could be social media. It could be anything. As long as we're just applying a subjective test, if a reasonable human, taking into account all of the information available to the other party or parties, would believe an offer or an acceptance had been made, depending on which perspective we're looking at, then that's enough. Later we go into the question of formalities. It might mean that to be enforceable, it needs to be in writing. And it might be when we have some things in writing and some things not, that the parole evidence rule will kick in to impact what we can take into account and what we can't. But we'll deal with those complexities later. Right? For right now, that's all we need to think about. I really like the idea of a Tinder contract. I don't know why, it just amuses me.